Welcome, Susan. So pleased
Thank
to
you.
see you again. I had such great feedback at the last time you spoke on a panel, and I know that it'll be a really interesting conversation tonight. And I guess what I'd really like to talk to you about is the whole women and funding. As you may know, I did a one-year project to try and find out why women are funded less than men.
Okay.
Lived like a starving artist and
Right.
video interviewed VCs and
Mhm.
women founders and finished that about 6 years ago, and then put an ebook together. And so I'm very interested in how the ecosystem has changed, because in that year that I was doing that, there was a lot of other voices, other women raising that awareness and consciousness that there are challenges for women that possibly there aren't for men, or they weren't being acknowledged or covered or visible. So I was wondering from your side of the table how you see that, and what advice you'd give women who were pitching for venture capital.
Okay. I actually have seen a large increase of women entrepreneurs over my 20 years in venture capital.
That's so great.
It is fabulous and exceptional talent. And so I'm not sure if it is attributable to my being a female VC, because I've been in it over 20 years, and I have noticed the noticeable improvement of women entrepreneurs. To that end, in our fund at Aligned Partners, in our Fund 1, I think roughly half of our CEOs or entrepreneurs are women. Not because we have a gender lens. We only back the best entrepreneurs, and they just happen to be female in this case. And in Fund 2, we have 1/3 so far of our fund that are female founders or CEOs. So we actually like women entrepreneurs a lot. We find that the women are very pragmatic in their approach to building companies, and which is, of course, coincides really nicely with our business model at our venture fund. So we actually find a lot of synergy with the way they approach building their businesses and focusing them on getting to profitability through revenues and not focusing strictly on just fundraising. So I think they're great entrepreneurs from our standpoint.
So you're really beating the odds there to have half a fund funding women, and even a third, I would say.
Yeah, with successful exits too. So these are entrepreneurs who know how to make money for us, and which is what we're here for.
It's all about, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, in your very amazing situation there, could you talk about some of the issues that you've seen that I know it's not good to generalize, but some of the general issues that some of your female CEOs may have faced?
Yes, yes. So I would say, Aligned Partners has a very different model, which we focus on capital efficient companies. And our companies are driven to build high revenue growth, but also have an eye to achieving profitability, and then we typically exit them through M&A. I contrast that from the traditional, what I would call the outlier model of venture capital, which is premised that on a fund portfolio size of 25 to 35 companies, 2 to 3 of those companies will be the outsized returns and will deliver the greatest return to those funds, and the rest of them basically can go to zero. And in fact, if you look at return studies that I've seen in venture, 80% are losses. So I think the women that we have backed like the capital efficient approach. I think they're not as conducive to kind of breathe deeply and smell that vision. And that's why I say they're very pragmatic, and they're very much about how do I make returns for my shareholders. And not that men don't necessarily like to do that as well, but I think women are just what we have identified in the group that we've backed is that they are very pragmatic and approach building a business in a different way. If a female founder or CEO wants to get funded by outlier venture capitalists, then I think you have to have that big vision because those funds are looking for companies that are going to deliver outsized returns. And so, women that will be conducive to that style of business model for venture capital needs to bring that vision to the table and show that there are some validation points on that, and then, walk the talk.
Some of the things that the venture capitalist told me in that year of my little mini PhD was that women, sometimes women don't handle risk as well as men, and sometimes they have more dependents or are more concerned about their dependents, so whether that's parents, partner, children, and so again that limits their capacity or willingness to take risk. And another thing that I remember Tim Draper told me was that he felt that women take too seriously the win and the lose factor, and that he was encouraging them to do more sports. Remember this was like 7 years ago, right? So that they should do more sports and get the feeling that failure is not a bad thing, that you actually can rise up from the dead and start again, and that that women somehow take that more seriously. If they're not going to win, then they hold themselves back. Yeah. So I wonder what your thoughts are on those points.
So I think in general, if you look at women, and I hate to generalize here,
Yes, but it's almost the end.
Women have had to work harder, have had to prove themselves more to get to higher level positions, because it's just a reality of being in the business world. So failures for them can have greater impact than, let's say, a male colleague. And so I think women have tended to be a little bit more cautious in their career development. They don't. It's so interesting because we backed a company called Talent Sonar that has developed algorithms around hiring and promotion that removes unconscious bias. And what we discovered in the education process in that marketplace for me and things is that when a woman applies for a job position, she looks at the spec, she reads and understands the spec, and then she says, oh, I have done this, and I have done this. Therefore, I am qualified for this job. Whereas when a man applies and looks at a spec, he goes, oh, I could do that, I could do that, I could do that. Therefore, I'm going to apply for this job too. And so just that approach of just that very clear difference, I think says a lot about the way that women approach what they can do and the risks that they take versus the men. And so I guess I would tend to agree with Tim on that they are not as they will not go out on the high limb. And I think partly that's because they feel responsible to all their shareholders for returns, is what I've seen, that they take that responsibility very seriously. Whereas men view it as more like a game. And you win, you lose, okay, we go on to the next company. Whereas women go, no, I will win this game. I will make money for my shareholders. And, in that regard, I like that seriousness. I like that commitment to delivering returns for me as an investor.
Well, for your fund, it sounds like it's totally working for you. So
that's great. And keep them coming. Just keep sending them to us down Sound Hill Road. You can send them on over to our place. We love that.
And I'm sure the women love it too. It's great that you're supporting them in that way. And so where do you think, I've seen massive changes just in my little corner of the ecosystem. You're noticing big changes as far as the women that are coming in now. Where do you think we're going as far as removing bias? And do you think it is possible here in the Valley?
Well, I'd love to see more women in venture capital. And
Yes,
we're starting to see changes on that. But it's been a long road, and it will continue to be a while because partnerships are small entities, and therefore there's a lot of trust and cohesion among those partners, and not all partnerships are amenable to different viewpoints around the table. So hopefully that will, I've seen it starting to change, and hopefully that will continue. There's a lot more variety in business models amongst venture funds now, and so you see women stepping out and doing their own funds much more and with the belief that, hey, I can do this, I can do this. So I've seen that dramatic change as well. So I think as we get more women on the investor side of the table, whether that's in investing angels or whether that's venture capitalists, or women in the limited partners that are funding these funds, I think that will lead ultimately to, a more comfortable and probably more funding of women entrepreneurs as well.
So something that happened for me after I completed that project was that I used to have lots of women who come from overseas would reach out to me because there was a lot of videos on YouTube. And one gal from Malaysia, we banded together. They did infographics, and we put the first infographic about women getting funded together. Kaufman hadn't even done it.
Yes.
And in that, I pulled all the research together that was available, and it said that it was really important to support female VCs because for some reason the stats were showing that when there was a female VC in a firm, then they would more likely fund women in that firm. Mm-hmm. Not from favoritism, because women would shy away from doing that, but more because they would understand the business that the female entrepreneur brought to the table. And so they thought that, it was important to support. So that's what I've been doing for many years. But I do find that this difference between men and women as far as ego goes and confidence, that women, the female VCs are not as ready to get out there and, talk and promote themselves as much as the men. Just to give you an example, with these VC chats, I reached out to with a whole lot of new dates, totally booked up with the men in both San Francisco and Mountain View, and not a word back from any of the women, and I've got a massive mailing list.
I need to help you on that. Let me help you. So I'm a Kaufman Fellow, and as is Clint, which you're going to be interviewing shortly. And so in the Kaufman Fellows program, we have done, I think, an excellent job bringing women into venture capital. So let me help you bring more women to your speaking. Fantastic. I can do that.
And I do have a page on easybiz.com for many years where I've been promoting female VCs for speaking slots. And that's Great. Not just here in the Valley, but some European ones as well that I know. So,
thank you, I appreciate that.
But again, it's important, I think, for them as well to actually be willing to jump in. Yes. And, like you're right. Always willing whenever I reach out, so thank you.
I just view it as kind of our job in educating entrepreneurs. So it's not just about beating your own drum, which I think women may not be the best at. It's yes. about getting out and educating and reaching entrepreneurs so that they are better entrepreneurs. And I think if you take that perspective, you'll get lots of women VCs.
And I think definitely that's my focus too with running these events, because I love to learn myself, and I feel every time I have one of these VC chats that I learn heaps, even though I've been around venture capitalists for many years. So, and I think it's wonderful, all the knowledge that the venture capitalists have. From your perspective, for where you sit in that investment process, you get access to incredible information, and everyone brings, of course, their own flavour to that. Yes. So thanks again, Susan. I'm looking forward to the talk tonight.
All right, me too. Thank you for asking me.